to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Hope everybody's staying safe out there. Before I get started, just want to let everybody know that tonight, around 9 p.m., I'll have Bad Dog on the channel for Talkin' Giants. We'll recap the draft, and we'll talk about the future of this football team, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'll try to have another video up as well, but in this video, I'm going to talk about the depth chart, something that a lot of you guys have asked me to do, make a way too early 55-man roster video. Yes, that's right. It is 55 men this year. They expanded the rosters due to, I think, the impending increased schedule. Not this year, but the following year, there will be 17 games on the schedule. The NFL has elected to go with 55 men on the active roster as opposed to 53. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I'm going to show you last year's roster, how the Giants broke it down, some of the alterations I made, and then show you guys the players that I think will crack the roster. I'll go over the starters as well. So, here you have it. Here is last year's 53-man roster. So, keep in mind there will be 2 added players to my roster for the 2020 season. If you watch there, they had 3 quarterbacks. I elected to go with 2. They certainly could go with 3. If they had 3 at 53, they could certainly have 3 at 55. I elected to go with 2. We'll have to wait and see if Alex Tanney makes the roster. I had an addition to the running back. They had 4. I went with 5. I also had an addition to the wide receiver. They went with 6. I went with 7. I kept the offensive line the same at 9. I kept the tight ends the same at 3. And I kept the special teams the same at 3. In terms of the defense, I kept the linebackers the same at 9. The DBs the same at 11. And I added 1 additional defensive lineman, making 6. So there was 1 additional D lineman, 1 additional wide receiver, 1 additional running back, and 1 less quarterback, making for 2 additional players on the 2020 roster for my projected way too early 55-man roster for the New York Giants. And we're going to start with the quarterback position. If you look there in the top left corner, of course, I'm going with Daniel Jones, the second-year pro out of Duke. Had a fantastic rookie season. Hopefully something to build off of. Got to work on the fumbling issues, but overall, showed you guys a lot. And he still has a lot to build on, but definitely showed some promise in his rookie year. Backing him up will be Colt McCoy. The former Texas standout while at college, has kind of jumped around throughout the league. He's been with the Redskins for the last 4 or 5 years or so. So he definitely has some familiarity within the division, and he's definitely a tough quarterback, smart quarterback, could bring a lot to the locker room and help out Daniel Jones while backing him up. Next up, we're going to go with the running back position. Last year, like I said, they had 4. I went with 5. Of course, the number 1 running back on our roster, and really, in my opinion, the number 1 player on our roster, Saquon Barkley out of Penn State. There's not many players better in the game. Backing him up will be the free agent acquisition from Tennessee, Dion Lewis, of course, formerly played with the New England Patriots. Well, Joe Judge was there. That may have something to do with the connection and why he wanted to be a New York Giant. Lewis entering the season, I think he's going to be 30. He's coming off a mediocre couple of years with Tennessee. Had a really good year 3 years ago with the New England Patriots. We'll have to wait and see what the New York Giants could get out of him in the backup role. Elijah Penny, of course, will be the lone fullback, and I think he's a gimme to make the roster. I expect him to be here. Wayne Gallman, I did have him making the roster. One of the last 4 or 5 guys to crack it, but he did just make it to be the third-string running back. And behind him will be Javon Leake, the undrafted free agent running back from Maryland. The guy I'm kind of excited about. He's 6 foot, averaged over 7 yards a carry well at Maryland, and could definitely help in the special teams department. I think he had a kick return for a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe Judge views him as a guy that could bring some versatility to this offense and the special teams unit. Next up, we got the wide receivers. They went with 6 last year. I went with 7. Now, I couldn't pick every undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver. Some of them will make the practice squad. I went with 7 in total. Of course, you have your 3 gimmies at the top, that being Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. I think Slayton's going to have a huge year for the New York Giants. I think he fits this offense perfectly. In terms of Tate and Shepard, Tate's pretty durable. He had obviously the suspension last year. Shepard you worry about with the concussions, but if they could stay on the field, it's at least an adequate wide receiver group there with those 3. Corey Coleman, to me, I think will make the roster, and definitely a guy that, if given the opportunity, has some speed and maybe could take the top off the defense on a few plays this year. We'll see if he gets in there and if he can remain healthy. Of course, he got hurt last year. We had pretty big expectations for him. 2 years ago, we signed him midway through the year, was great in the special teams department. I expect him to remain there, and maybe he will be returning kicks, but he's certainly going to have some competition with some of the other guys we're going to mention on this roster. Cody Core was great in punt coverage last year. One of the, standouts for the New York Giants last year, an unsung hero. I think he will make the roster. Judge obviously values special teams. I think that's why they brought Cody Core back. Benjamin Victor out of Ohio State. One of the undrafted free agent wide receivers who I think has some promise. He fits exactly what this team needs. We kind of need a tall threat. If you look at this receiving core, Slayton's the tallest guy. At least a guy that has a significant role. He's only 6'1". Victor brings that 6'4" presence. He's had a knack for getting in the end zone. He's had over 20 touchdowns throughout his career in limited opportunities in terms of catching the football well at Ohio State. And I think he will make the roster because of that. And Derek Dillon, the same reason. I think he has something that the other receivers that they brought in don't have, and that is speed. The guy ran a 4.27 or a 4.29 at his pro day. I can't remember. But that speed is definitely a valuable asset. Maybe you could use him here and there on trick plays, but certainly could help in the special teams department. You can't coach speed. Next up, we got the tight ends, and this was pretty cut and dry for me. I went with the same amount as they had on their roster last year. Obviously, different names, but I went with 3, and that was Evan Ingram, Kaden Smith, and Levine Toilolo. Evan Ingram, of course, will be the starter. I expect him to play very well when he's on the field in this system. The tight ends have really done well in terms of catching the football in the Air Coryell offense. Kaden Smith had great chemistry with Daniel Jones in his rookie season. He was drafted by the Niners in the 6th round. The Niners elected to cut him. The Giants went and picked him up, and Kaden Smith showed a lot of promise down the stretch. And Levine Toilolo, a guy that not a lot of people are talking about, who I'm actually really excited about. I expect the Giants to use him in the red zone. He's a tall threat at 6'7", not known for separation or athletic ability. He's not going to catch a lot of balls. But what he is known for is a blocker. You expect to see him in a lot of 2 tight end sets at the goal line, and definitely will help Saquon Barkley hopefully this year spring some big runs. Next up, we got the offensive line. I went with the same number as on the roster last year, and that was 9. You're going to see a lot of rookies on this list, being that the New York Giants spent 3 of their first 5 selections on the offensive line. Andrew Thomas at the top. Not sure if he's going to start at the left or the right tackle, but I definitely think he'll be starting somewhere on that line. Below him, they could cut him. I don't think they will. Nate Solder has some of the most experience on this roster. The former Patriot with Joe Judge. I think the Giants give him another shot. Hopefully he gets his head on straight. He will be starting at one of the other. Whatever tackle Thomas doesn't start at, Solder will be starting at. Will Hernandez and Kevin Zeitlers are gimmies at the guard. Will Hernandez, the former second-round pick, regressed a little bit last year. Hopefully he gets his rookie form back and gets even better with the improved coaching from Mark Colombo. Zeitler, probably the most reliable offensive lineman on this unit, at least as of now. We expect Andrew Thomas to be great, but Zeitler was pretty strong last year for the Giants at the right guard position. In terms of the center, well, it's kind of a 3-man race right now, and that's between Spencer Pulley, Shane Lemieux, and Nick Gates. Nick Gates was originally drafted as a guard, got some time at the tackle position for the Giants last year, did a pretty good job, but he has been taking snaps at the center. He's been practicing to compete at that position, and if nothing else, brings some versatility. Shane Lemieux played guard well in college, but they say he has the body of a center. He's been practicing taking snaps. I really like this kid, the 5th-round pick. Expect him to compete for that position as well. And Spencer Pulley has some definitely experience playing the center position, so expect those 3 to battle it out, unless, of course, they sign somebody. The other 2 offensive linemen, Cam Fleming, formerly played with the Patriots with Joe Judge, a swing tackle, a guy that can play both the right and the left. I like him definitely as a depth piece on this offensive line. And Matt Parrott will make the roster, the 3rd-round pick out of UConn. I don't think he has much of a role this year, or at least at the beginning. I think he is the right tackle of the future and a guy I'm really looking forward to. Special teams, we went with 3. You've got Aldrick Rosas. You need a kicker. He's back. Rosas had a subpar year last year. A lot of people attribute that to the long snapper, Diassi. They've moved on from Diassi. We'll see how Rosas does, see if he can get back to that Pro Bowl form he had just 2 years ago. Riley Dixon was fantastic for the Giants last year at the punter position. Of course, he had way too much practice. And then Casey Kreider, the long snapper the Giants acquired. He was a Pro Bowler just 2 years ago. The Giants could definitely use some stability in that department. The defensive line, I went with 6. They had 5 last year. Leonard Williams. To me, Leonard Williams, obviously a gimme, make it $16 million a year. Brings some flexibility. You can move him on the inside and the out. Maybe the most talented guy in this bunch, Dexter Lawrence, the 17th overall pick last year. Had a fantastic rookie season. I expect him to really just build off of that. known for being great up at the line of scrimmage, batting balls, and I think he's going to have a really good year. B.J. Hill, kind of a little disappointing last year. Had a really strong rookie season. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he set the record for the most sacks by a rookie in New York Giants history. I could be wrong on that with 5.5. Needs to get back to that. Last year, he didn't do much of getting after the quarterback. Was used sparingly because they had a lot of depth at that position. We'll have to wait and see the role that Hill has on this defense. Dalvin Tomlinson did a great job last year in the middle at the nose tackle position. Expect him to get a lot of time with this unit. Austin Johnson, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, played at Penn State with Coach Chaos, and said that was a huge reason why he came to the New York Giants, the defensive line coach. Johnson, a former first or second round pick, can't remember, has a lot of potential, and we'll see if the Giants can get it out of him. And then finally, R.J. Mcintosh. I think he went to Miami, 5th round pick of the Giants just 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, and really hasn't done much yet in the NFL. When he's gotten the opportunity, he's looked decent, but this has been such a stacked unit, he hasn't really gotten to see the field too much. The linebacker core, we went with 9, much like last year. Blake Martinez, obviously at the top, will definitely be starting. Formerly of the Green Bay Packers, has the most tackles in the NFL over the last 3 years. He's been very solid and consistent in terms of that aspect. Needs to work on the coverage a bit. Has familiarity, obviously, with Patrick Graham. Well, Graham was the linebacker coach with the Green Bay Packers. David Mayo will be backing him up. I don't expect him to start. If Conley is healthy, I think he'll be the other starter. Mayo proved to be a very solid depth player. Stepped in for the Giants last year when given the opportunity. Was thought to be more of a special teams contributor, and actually was very good against the run. I think PFF ranked him in the top 3 or 4. Ryan Conley, the first 3 or 4 games he played with the Giants last year before the injury, was fantastic. He'll definitely make this roster, and if he's healthy, we'll get to compete to start alongside Blake Martinez. O'Shane Ximines had a really strong rookie year. We'll see if he can build off of it. He had 4.5 sacks, came on strong at the end of the season out of Old Dominion, former 3rd-round pick. I think he could have a very strong season for the New York Giants. Matter of fact, he's my pick to lead the team in sacks. Renzo Carter out of Georgia, guy that I'm really excited to see how they implement him in this defense. You can move him around in a lot of ways. Long arms, very athletic. We'll see if he can build off of last year. Kind of underwhelming last year. We had really high hopes last year. Let's see if he can match the expectations we had going into the second season in his 3rd year. Cam Brown, TJ Brunson, Carter Coughlin, all late-round picks for the New York Giants. Brown in the 6th, Brunson in the 7th, and Coughlin in the 7th. I expect most of these guys' role to be in the special teams area. I think that's why they were drafted predominantly. Coughlin, I could see carving out a niche for the New York Giants as a situational pass rusher. And then finally, Kyler Fackrell, which was a sneaky pickup by the New York Giants. The Giants are hoping he provides the production that Marcus Golden provided last year in the sack department. Of course, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, said he loves playing for Patrick Graham, and we'll see how he fits this system. And then finally, the 11 defensive backs went with, I think, 6 corners, 5 safeties, somewhere along those lines. James Bradbury, DeAndre Baker will be the starters. Bradbury, of course, our biggest offseason acquisition on a 3-year, $45 million deal. Expect him to be locking down the opposing number 1. The second corner will be DeAndre Baker, who had a somewhat underwhelming rookie year, has a lot to build off of. I think he gets his head on straight. I think he's used better this year, and I expect him to have a very strong sophomore season. Sam Beal, the often injured corner that the New York Giants picked in the supplemental draft, the Giants gave up a 3rd-round pick for him, will be a depth player. I don't see him being a starter on this football team, but he will make the roster. Julian Love is a guy you can move around, kind of a jack-of-all-trades player. He'll play some safety. He'll play some in the slot. His playing time may get cut a little bit. You know, a lot of people had him penciled in to be the starter, but after the acquisitions of Xavier McKinney and Darnay Holmes, the next guy we're going to talk about, it'll be interesting to see how they implement Julian Love. Darnay Holmes, to me, is a strict nickel corner. He stands at 5'10", the 4th-round pick out of UCLA. A lot of people thought he could be the best nickel corner in this year's draft, and the Giants might have found themselves a diamond in the rough in the 4th round of this year's draft. Very smart, tough, gritty football player, hard worker. I like him a lot. Corey Ballantyne just makes the roster. Struggled a little bit last year in the slot, but definitely could provide something in the special teams department, and maybe he could build off of some of the things he learned with better coaching. Maybe he could provide out a role with the New York Giants. Then you got Jabril Peppers. Peppers might be the best player on this defense. Another guy that you could use in a variety of ways. You could move him at the linebacker, the corner, whatever it may, the safety rather, whatever it may be. And I really like Peppers. The same can be said for McKinney. McKinney had over 450 snaps at 3 different positions over the last 2 years. Well, at Alabama. Really like this kid. Think the Giants got a steal with the 36th overall selection. Nate Ebner, of course, will be used mainly in the special teams department. Played there with Judge, was a standout well with the Patriots. Montre Hardage, the Giants just picked up from the Miami Dolphins, had experience with Patrick Graham. Graham picked him up last year immediately after the draft as an undrafted free agent, and the Giants and Patrick Graham pick him up yet again immediately after the Miami Dolphins cut him to make room on their roster. So Hardage, I think, will make the team. I think that the Giants really like him. Very smart player, guy that could play in the secondary. And then Chris Williamson, finally, I think he was a 7th-round pick by the Giants. The cornerback was probably the last guy to make my roster. So there you have it, guys. That is my 55-man roster for the New York Giants. Definitely could have went with some different names as well, but that's what I got right now. That could definitely change leading up into the season, seeing how these players perform if and when we do have a training camp. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.